Hey, babe. What are we talking about today?
Today, we are talking about home buying and if it's a good idea.
Very good topic because right now housing prices are ridiculous.
Housing prices, interest rates, all of it just feels honestly out of reach because we know that everything has gotten more expensive, but our incomes have not risen to the occasion the same way the price of everything else has gone up. I mean, what, a few weeks ago you were talking about the car wash, how it used to be $6, now it's $10. I took my mom to a show at the Performing Arts Center in Durham for The Lion King. And you and I have go to shows there often. And uh, parking used to be $7. Like it has been consistently $7 for the last couple of years. And then this time when we went to the exact same garage that we always go to, it was 10. And I was like, why? Why is everything going up by like actual dollars, not just like a few cents here or there? I mean, actual dollars. And it really has become infuriating. But I feel like for people who are looking to buy a home, it really just feels out of reach.
Yeah, because I would say in the past couple years, the increase that we've just seen in the area where we live and how home prices has is unprecedented. How quickly it has risen.
It's
Almost
crazy.
seeing a doubling in some of the home values over the course of 3-4 years.
Right. And, you know, if you have bought a house and sold a house, then you've probably benefited from that. But if you're new to the market, if you're new to the area, if you're new to home buying, and maybe you're looking at your first property, I mean, I feel sorry for you, honestly.
Yeah, it's tough because if you already have money in the market, as far as you already own a home and then you're looking to purchase another one, it's not that big of a deal. But as far as being someone who's initially putting money into the market to buy a house, as just said, it seems very unattainable. I had met with a potential client about 2 weeks ago, and we're going through they're going through their information, and they had bought a house for around 575, between 545 and 575, I want to say, back at the end of 2020. The house is now valued at 1.2 million.
That's insane.
End of 2020 to now.
Wow. And you know, again, that's one of those situations where it's like good for you.
Yeah.
That's not, you don't buy a house and think, "Hey, I'm going to literally double the value in 3 to 4 years." But I mean, think of the equity now.
I
But
mean,
also
they were
again,
talking about how like I can't I like they're like I could never buy this house now.
well, that's the thing, right? Even, you know, Yahoo News and a bunch of other publications have put out that, you know, they're doing all these surveys, and the surveys are basically coming back as, no, I could not currently afford the home that I'm in, right? Because of things like that. You spent 475, or let's call it 500 even, and now that same house is over $1 million. Like most of us are not in a position at this stage, right? Again, we're elder millennials to be buying $1 million homes. If you are, great to you. You clearly did something right. I don't know, maybe you're a trust fund baby, whatever that situation is, good for you. You go, boo. But most of us, if you're, you know, a normal working adult who's like making it day by day, you cannot afford comfortably a $1 million plus home.
I also think it's funny when we were kids and we were looking at what a $1 million home would be in
Right.
comparison to
It's like a mansion,
yeah, and then now $1 million home is like
a shack.
yeah.
Well, especially depending on, you know, like if you're in Seattle or
California,
California, or
yeah, a million
you're
dollar.
like buying a rundown fixer upper at $1 million.
I saw something the other day. I don't know for the individuals out there, whoever saw the movie back in the day, Boys in the Hood. Um, Movie where it takes place, obviously, as the title says, in the hood. And they were
In the
showing the
hood.
housing prices for the homes that were used in that movie now. And they're like $800,000 homes.
And they're still what, dilapidated
They're still tiny
shacks?
little things in the,
Yeah.
quote unquote hood in Compton.
Oh my gosh. I mean, and that's, you know, that's the sad reality is it's just gotten so expensive. And so for people who are contemplating, does it make sense for me to buy a house? Do I wait? Do I purchase one now? You know, our interest rate compared to the house that we sold last year, more than doubled, right? We were sitting at a cushy 2.65. Now we're at 6.125 and it hurts. And, we were hoping that we would have been able to refinance already. And unfortunately, that has not been the case. But we're going to be doing some celebratory dancing when that time comes that we can, hopefully get us maybe into the fours. I don't anticipate us getting back under three anytime soon, if ever. But can I get something with a four, please? Because that will make a big difference on what we're paying every month because our mortgage doubled. And so depending on the kind of lifestyle that you want, do you have kids? Do you not? Do you want a backyard? Do you not need one? I mean, all of those things determine, like, is right now the time to buy a home? What kind of home? Or is renting okay?
Yeah, the idea of this episode is to talk through what the thought process would be in making a determination on whether or not buying a home is right for you at this time.
Yeah. So let's kick it off. What's the first question that you think somebody should ask themselves that's considering purchasing a home?
The first question, I believe, is why do you actually want to buy a house? What is the reasoning, behind wanting to make a purchase? What is the answer to that question? The reason I say that is because I feel for a lot of people that sometimes they're just trying to check the boxes off on quote unquote adulting.
You're not a true adult if you don't own a home.
Exactly. And I think that we've gotten so caught up in what has happened in previous generations, and we're comparing that to now, and the environment is not the same. Like
Hmm.
the options are not the same. That it's just
The
not a
prices are not the
it's not an
same.
apples to apples comparison. Like when you hear your parents or your grandparents talk about being your age, like, oh, I own a home, da, 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 this and this and this. It's not the same.
It's just not.
Especially if it's your grandparents and they're still around, they're telling you about like, okay, yeah, like you bought a house for like $4,000, grandpa. Like, great. That's 1 month worth of rent now. Like,
Yeah.
so I really want people to think through what is the reason that you are purchasing a home? Are you buying a home because it's what other people are telling you should do? Or is it something that you genuinely want to do? Because we're often also told that buying a house is an investment. And I like to kind of give some pushback on that because I think with your primary residence, could it eventually be an investment? 100%. However, initially, is it? No. It's a lifestyle choice. You are choosing to purchase a home because you want certain things in your home. If whenever I talk to someone who rents a house, they talk about the things that they maybe don't like about renting. The one thing is that I can't make it the way that I want to make it. I can't paint the walls that I want them to paint them. I can't do this. I can't do that. And that's one of the reasons why people want to buy a house because then they can make it their own.
Hmm.
So,
I think there's also that element, especially, again, we're elder millennials. So if you're listening and you're in that age bracket, you've probably heard time and time again from our boomer parents, renting is throwing money away. Renting is paying somebody else's mortgage. Renting is, putting money straight down the trash and you're getting nothing for it. When the reality is you're getting a roof over your head. You're getting a place to live. You're getting, honestly, you get a lot when you're a renter. You get flexibility. You don't have to stay put. You can choose to stay there for a year and then move somewhere else. I think also renting is a great option if you are new to an area and you're not familiar with your surroundings, right? What part of town do you want to be in? What grocery store do you want to frequent? What parks do you want to go to? Where's your favorite coffee shop going to be? I mean, when you buy a home, the reality is, for most of us, again, if you're not like a multi bajillionaire, you lose flexibility because you now own this home that you need to pay for. Whereas if you're renting, you have flexibility. Maybe you sign a 1 year lease and, hey, this didn't work out, didn't like the flow, didn't like my neighbors, the neighborhood wasn't what I wanted. Guess what? You can pick up and go somewhere else. Obviously, there's costs involved with moving and all of that. I don't want to diminish, kind of being more transient, but the idea of, hey, I'm buying a home and now I want to not live in this home next year, that's not a good financial decision. So if you are unsure, if you're moving to a new area, why lock yourself into something like a quote unquote 30-year mortgage or 15-year mortgage? And then you decide, hey, I want to move to a different state. I want to move to a different city. I want to move to a different part of town. That would not be a wise decision. So in those scenarios, renting, I think, is fantastic.
I mean, I could even say that if I could go back to, so the first home that I purchased was 100% with the help of my mother, when I was 26 years old. And at the time, they had a first time home buyer's tax credit, where essentially the money that I put for a down payment, which my mom loaned to me, I got that money back in the tax credit and was able to pay it back to my mom.
I did the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I definitely, thinking back now, like, I'm 100% grateful that my mama did that. But I also felt rushed because of the timing in order to purchase a home to qualify for the tax credit. When in reality, if that tax credit wasn't there and I had the actual time to just think about it, I had just recently moved back to North Carolina, and a lot had changed since I had left the area. And I probably would have benefited more from renting and maybe finding out where I like to live better,
Hmm.
as since things had changed,
Yeah.
So honestly, if I could go back and do it, I probably would have done a little bit different.
Yeah. I actually have never lived in an apartment. And I obviously apartment living is not the only kind of renting that you can do. But if we're thinking about home buying versus renting in an apartment building, for example, I've never actually lived in an apartment complex. And a friend of ours moved here temporarily, and I went apartment shopping with him, and I was blown away by how gorgeous some of these apartment complexes were. Now, he's a physical therapist, makes a great income, all of that. So we were looking at pretty high caliber type apartments, but they were gorgeous. The amenities were great. They had, I mean, there's a lot of convenience in those apartments. And I was like, wow, I feel like I've kind of missed out on some of this. So,
And also the reality is too is that with the current environment that we're in, before it used to be like, obviously you had to put up the down payment for the home. But when it came to the actual mortgage payment on a monthly basis, that was significantly less than renting. And that was
right.
often, the big draw. Like, you had a big upfront cost,
You would pay
but
less to
you pay less
own.
over the
Mhm.
time. And that's not the case anymore. With interest rates being the way that they are and housing prices having increased, it is pretty much on par, if not mortgages a little bit higher on average than the average rent.
Well, and then from there, you have to think about, and I know we're going to get into that kind of financial readiness, but when you pay your rent, that is what you pay, right? Whereas when you have your mortgage, you have your taxes, you have your insurance, anything that breaks is now your responsibility. The moment you sign on that dotted line, if that roof collapses, if that toilet leaks, if that floorboard springs up, guess whose problem it is? Yours. Guess who's going to have to pay for it? You. Whereas if you are renting, you call the super and it gets fixed. I mean, there is comfort in that for sure, right? Especially if you don't have, a huge emergency fund set aside for those things that inevitably will go wrong, because it's Murphy's Law, right? If it can go wrong, it will. And as a homeowner, it is now your responsibility to get it fixed. And those things can be costly and they can be really frustrating. And so I think, especially, maybe for a younger individual, maybe a young professional, somebody who wants to travel often, renting, I think, offers that flexibility and that comfort in knowing that, hey, if my toilet doesn't work tomorrow, I can call somebody and it does not have to come out of my pocket.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's really assessing your finances and seeing if you are financially ready to, quote unquote, purchase a home,
Right.
because it's not just simply the, cost, the known cost, your down payment, your mortgage payment. A lot of people,
Taxes and
honestly, but well, the
insurance.
thing is, a lot of people don't even think about the taxes and the insurance aspect,
Those are some of the most expensive
but they
things.
don't think about it initially. They
You
normally
should
think
think
about
about
just the
it.
down payment and the mortgage. So don't think about all the other costs that are associated with owning a home,
HOAs,
and then things breaking, and then also, like, if you're moving into a home and you're coming from an apartment, you might need some more furniture, you might need a good washer and dryer,
refrigerator.
refrigerator.
Have the price of appliances, can we just take a quick pause? The price of appliances right now, out of control. When we sold our house last year, they asked for all of the appliances. We got them new with the house, so they were, what, 4 years old, going on 5 years, I think. And we said, that's fine. We have different setup, different space in the new house. We will leave them, work them into the price, and we will purchase new. When we started looking at those appliance prices in 2023, I mean, I think my jaw is still on the floor. Like, why are washers and dryers over $1,000? Right now, of course, we're looking for certain features, but again, we're not like looking to remote into our washer with our cell phone. Nothing crazy like that. But
I think ours does have like some Wi-Fi feature that we actually
the
don't use.
refrigerator does, but it they are expensive. And then yeah, to your point, you're moving into this house, you're so excited, you want it to instantly feel like home. And guess what? Making a house feel like a home is when you have to buy things, right? That's when you're buying your decorative items and maybe new furniture, or maybe you have an extra room now and it's going to be your office or your guest room, and so you're purchasing things for that. I mean, it adds up quickly.
And the thing that it goes back to is the financial planning aspect of assessing where you are currently at. As far
Mhm.
as looking at the money of coming in, the money of going out, and assessing from there, can you afford to purchase a home?
Right.
And it also is not just necessarily like, the process of being approved for a mortgage. How much are you approved for? Because I could tell you that I think 9 times out of 10, people are often approved for a larger mortgage than what they probably could comfortably afford based on their current finances.
Right.
So it's not just a matter of what you're approved for, what can you afford?
Yeah. We have an episode, if you want to go back, with David Kane, who is our personal mortgage broker, episode 12. It's really fantastic. And he
We'll
talks
definitely have to have them
about,
again.
yes, he talks about, getting ready to purchase a home and starting that process 12 to 18 months before you actually want to purchase. So if you're like waking up on a Tuesday and you're like, you know what, I'm ready to buy a home, you're not. You need to go and talk to somebody. What is that credit score looking like? What's your debt to income ratio looking like? Your credit score is going to determine your mortgage rate. The rates are already astronomical. If your credit score is not 750 or above, it's going to be even higher, right? So that credit score is going to feed into your interest rate, and that interest rate is going to make a huge difference on what that mortgage payment is. Because I can tell you right now, sitting at 6.125, if we dropped that down by 2%, we would be saving hundreds of dollars.
And that leads into the next area. Do you understand the process of buying a home? Like, what is the actual from start to finish process that you have to go through in order to purchase a home? And it's perfectly fine if you don't, because in all honesty, most of the time when you're getting ready to purchase your first home, you don't thoroughly know the process. You just don't.
Which is why you should start that conversation early, have your list of questions, ask your lender, what do I need to be asking you, right? What do I need to know? Tell me what I don't know, and let's work through this together. And they'll have that conversation with you. That's their job.
And that's why you should lean into these professionals. This is
Yes.
what they do for a living. And you should definitely be, especially when you're a first time home buyer, you should definitely be working with someone that has a consultative approach, where
Yes.
because you don't know what you don't know, so they should be teaching you along the way, which is one of the things that I love, with our lender and also our friend David Kane, is that he has that approach. He is educating people on the process. He's not just answering your questions, he's explaining to you all the things that you don't know that you need to know.
And I think too, when you're making a big purchase, whether it's your home or your car, people will give you all sorts of advice, right? Your parents, your siblings, your aunties, your uncles, everybody's got an opinion about what they went through, what their experience was, how they did it, how they wish they wouldn't have done it. Okay, that's great. Take it all with a grain of salt, and go and talk to a professional. They have, just like Brandon always talks about, when you're learning or hearing about what other people are doing with their finances, that is a singular view. This is what I do. This is what I invest in. This is the 529 plan I set my child up for. The professionals have a view of a range of people, right? And a range of budgets and a range of scenarios and a range of, this person had this credit score, this person had this credit score, here's what we did.
Also, the changing environment, because it's constantly
It's
changing.
constantly changing, and it is their job to keep up with those nuances, the changing environment, and to really understand how can we make this the best experience for your situation. So as you people are feeding you information about what they did and their mama did and their daddy did, take that with a grain of salt. Thank you so much. And then
Mhm.
lean into those professionals who are licensed in the industry, who are professionals, who are staying on top of what's happening, and lean into those people to get your answers for your specific situation. Because what your mama did might have worked 20 years ago and might have been great, but what was her credit score? What were the interest rates? What was her income to debt ratio, right? You don't know those things in most cases. So lean into the people that you're going to be paying for this service to get the information that applies to you.
And I do want to call out making sure that you are aware of the good advice versus the bad advice from, working with a certain person. Like, you should be able to, from a gut feeling, realize that this person is the one that you should be working with, especially when they should be providing you with so much more information. They shouldn't just be answering the questions that you ask. They should be providing you with so much more information, because it is a complicated process, and and like, depending on your situation, there's a variety of ways to do things. So the one, like, example I'm going to use is that my mom has bought several homes over the year, but the last home that she bought, we were working with someone new that we had never worked with before, and they were not a good lender. They were not
Terrible
they were
experience.
not a good mortgage broker. It was a very bad experience. And I'm just going to break it down to the fact
0
that
out of 5
my
stars.
mother is retired, so she doesn't, quote unquote, have a W-2 income coming in, but she is perfectly fine. Her net worth is very nice, and she's taken care of. She's done a good job for herself. And the lender was essentially trying to tell us that she cannot qualify for the mortgage for the home that she was looking to purchase because she doesn't have enough, quote unquote, income coming in. When literally my mom could have paid for the house in cash and still had plenty of money. And I was like, this doesn't seem right. There has to be another process,
Red
another way
flag.
to qualify her for the mortgage. And she kept going back and forth with me saying that I don't know what I'm talking about. And I was like, I'm just going to go ahead and talk to the person above you. And once I talked to the person above and explained what was going on, one day it was done.
Yeah.
So it's very important to make sure that you find the right people. And like I said, we have a plethora. We have our mortgage lender that we can, recommend. And depending on whether state you live in, we might know somebody else that may be able to work in that state as well. So
Yeah.
that was my little, 2 cents about that.
I think too, one of the things that I think David in particular is really good at, and I think any good mortgage lender, mortgage broker would be good at this, is breaking down your scenario. For example, when we purchased our previous home that we sold in 2023, when we purchased it in 2018,
Yeah.
we put down 20%, and we didn't have PMI, or did we? No, I think we put down 10%. And then because the home values went up so much, the PMI rolled
Yes.
off.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. But with this house, the current house, we put down the minimum, because putting down the 20% would have cost us close to $100,000. Um, and our PMI is like $90 a month. So it didn't make sense, as we ran the numbers, it didn't make sense to lose, quote unquote, lose almost, $80,000, $90,000 in cash
That we could have used
that we could be
elsewhere.
investing, that we could, have used. We purchased a fence, we purchased some new furniture. I mean, there was expenses that we incurred because this house is bigger and we have a nice big yard, et cetera, et cetera. And so we decided to stay as liquid as possible. And $90 a month, to us, is a better option in having PMI than shelling out $90,000. But again, what would our parents say? No, don't pay PMI. Don't pay P. You don't want PMI. Well, what's the big deal? Like, what's the stigma with PMI? Private mortgage insurance is what that stands for. And I'd rather spend $90 a month. We're not going to live in this house for 10 years, for 20 years, definitely not for 30 years. So, me spending $90 a month for a couple of years, but keeping thousands of dollars liquid, just made more sense. And so again, that was unique to our scenario. And those are the types of conversations that you can have with your lender to figure out what does make the most sense. What would they recommend?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it is being able to work with someone who's able to tailor to your specific situation and then also give you options. If
Options. I
you're
love my
sitting
options. You
normally if
know
you're
that.
sitting down with a lender and they only have one option for you, you probably need to go with another lender, because there's
Yes.
normally a variety of options and they have pros and cons for each one. So
And if you're not getting options, get a second opinion.
yeah,
Like, you don't need to stick with One person. I mean, in my
We did that our first time because
yeah.
with the house that we bought previously to this, the neighborhood that we bought in, they had a preferred lender, and we got some, perks and benefits of working with a preferred lender. But then we also talked to our own lender that we used before, David, and he was like, "No, this is a good deal." It's like,
Yeah, he
go with,
actually said, "Go with the preferred lender because I can't match this."
yeah,
Whereas in this new situation, we gave him the options of what the quote unquote preferred lender was providing. And he was like, "That's nothing special. I can do that for you." And we were like, "Great, we'll go through you." So again, work with somebody who's going to be honest, right? Like, we never question whether David is going to be a benefit to us, right? Because we know he has said, "Hey, go with that preferred lender. And when it's time to refinance, you come back to me," because he wanted us to have the
the best
greatest
deal.
benefit and the best deal, right? Because they were, taking off points and helping with closing costs and all sorts of things. And he'll try to match what's being offered. But in the event that he can't, he will say, go with that offer. And then when it's time to refinance, come back. So if you're not getting that kind of service, if you're not getting that kind of advice and consultative approach, go somewhere else
Hmm.
because you're probably missing out on a benefit.
So, kind of going into the last, as far as understanding market conditions, I'm gonna frame this in the reference of you've already thought through all the other aspects. You are financially sound to purchase the home, and you decided that, hey, you do want to go and purchase a home, but maybe the one thing that's holding you up is the current market condition with interest rates. Now, the way that I've always heard it referred to me is that you marry the price of your home, but you date the interest rate. So what that means is that don't necessarily be scared from purchasing a home. Now, obviously, if it's outside of your budget, that's a completely different story. But if you're scared away from a home that you could afford due to waiting for interest rates, you probably should just go ahead and pull the trigger. Reason being is that when interest rates being high, once they actually drop, what do you think is going to happen? Once interest rates drops, the housing cost is going to increase, and also the demand. So it's going to be much harder for you to even purchase a home. So
Because then that's when the inventory gets low.
exactly,
Yeah. And then you got
because
people purchasing way over asking price and putting down crazy due diligence money. And it becomes super, super competitive again.
because right now it's really tough because a lot of people are not selling or buying homes because of interest rates. But once those interest rates drops, the competition is going to stack back up. So it might be a benefit to you right now as far as purchasing the home with maybe a higher interest rate, but quote unquote in this environment a lower cost for the house, and then just waiting until interest rates drops to refinance.
Hmm.
So understanding how that stuff works and understanding that is also working with the proper professionals because they're able
Right.
to frame that for you in a way that you would understand.
And then also looking at future scenarios. I know we did that with David. I pretty much was like, I need all the calculations because, you hope, hey, we're locking in at this astronomical rate, especially coming off of the rate that we came from. We were like, hey, let's do 6 payments and then we'll refinance. That was the idea. Obviously, here we are a year and a half later and the rates are not dropping. But we do know that when the rates drop, I'm just going to speak it into existence, that we'll be able to refinance, our mortgage will go down, and then we'll be even more happy that we purchased the home that we did because it gives us what we needed. Unfortunately, the interest rate is not where we want it to be. But when those interest rates go down and our mortgage goes down, we will be even more grateful for the fact that we made this decision. So it is, it's a time game in some aspects, but we did the calculations to see, okay, if the mortgage rates go down to 5.1, 4.1, right? What
Mhm.
does that look like and what can we expect? And so running the numbers and understanding what could that potentially look like, that's something that you're going to want to do, but also going into it with, hey, what if they don't drop? Are we comfortable at this price? What if, we stay here for the next 5 years and the interest rates do not move? How will we feel about that? Can we comfortably afford it? Is it worth it? Does it make sense?
Yeah, and the idea of this conversation is obviously to think through the process leading up to purchasing a home, but it's also to dispel the idea that renting is throwing away money.
Yeah,
Like,
that's so antiquated, and people need to stop saying that because you need a place to live. You need a roof over your head. You need a safe and warm or cold place for your child and your children and your family and yourself and your dog and your goldfish. People need to just stop saying that. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, because the way that I always frame it is like your first, so your primary resident is a lifestyle choice. It's not necessarily an investment. Like I said, it could be an investment, but I wouldn't base it off of these past 3, 4 years of housing prices because this is unprecedented, and it's probably not going to be the way that it continues in regards to such a rapid growth over a short period of time.
Yeah. And think about all the people. I mean, we had, two kids under two at the start of COVID, but I had coworkers. I'm in the tech space. Most of us work remote. They were living their best lives, literally just traveling. They were doing like Airbnbs in all different states and traveling, month to month. And I mean, I don't know that you can comfortably do that when you own a home.
Normally, with your first residence, no, because normally your finances are going to end up being a little bit more strapped for
Right.
most people.
Right. But if you're renting, I mean, these people literally were like, okay, we're just not going to live here anymore and we're going to be, nomads. And they sold a whole bunch of stuff. And I mean, it looked like a very adventurous way to live at that time.
I mean, it's really kind of filtering out the noise of the older generation
Sorry, boomers.
and focusing on how do you want your life to look. You know, like I said, I think one of the things that happens way too often is that people first take their financial advice from their parents. Now, take that with a certain grain of salt. Your parents can be extremely successful and not be good at giving you advice in regards to finances for now.
Right.
Because the same environment that they lived through to make them successful is not the current environment that we're in now.
Right. I mean, I think about that all the time, right? Like thinking about my parents and their income growing up. We had two cars, they owned a home, we went on vacations. I wouldn't say that we had lavish things, but even then we had things in excess, right? Like I got a car in high school. We always had, whatever the latest item was, whether it was like a Walkman or a Game Boy or, as the consoles kind of changed. I mean, we never needed anything. Like we had everything in excess. The fridge was always full, and I don't know how we did it knowing what my parents made as a family of four. I mean, I'm like, how did we survive? How did we go on vacation? How did we have a great childhood?
Well, I
It's
mean,
crazy.
I'm in the same boat. We grew up middle to upper middle class on my mom's single income. And I always joke, and when people ask
Spending
about
your
it,
summers
I say I
in
spent my summers
Europe
in Europe, had a pool in our
playing
backyard, and I
soccer.
grew up on a cul-de-sac.
Yeah. How? I, I don't, we know with inflation and the cost of life and our incomes not keeping up with those costs,
And that's the biggest thing.
that's not realistic.
Incomes have not kept up. So, like, this issue of quote unquote inflation wouldn't be as big of an issue if salaries were on par.
My salary inflated the same way.
Yeah, but it's not even close. And it's not even
Yeah.
a disputable. It's not disputable. You can literally look at the numbers. It's math
Right.
showing that we are paying substantially more in comparison for things now than our parents did, and making substantially less than our parents did at this stage.
Yeah. So again, take their input with a grain of salt. Usually what they're saying was accurate or is
And
accurate
it comes from a
for the
good place. And it comes
time.
from a good place.
Yes, but it is 2024. Times have changed. The market has changed. Everything's so expensive. And so you really just need to reevaluate and ask yourself, why do you want to own a home? And then think about all those phantom costs that go into ownership, because the mortgage, the taxes, the insurance, the HOAs, the lawn care, when something breaks, it falls to you. There's a lot of costs that comes with owning a home that you could potentially avoid by renting.
I don't have anything else to add.
All right. Well, hopefully this episode was informative. Share it with a friend that's thinking about owning or purchasing their first home, and we will talk to you soon.